Our brains often subconsciously react differently to a visual given the music playing behind it. I think it's really interesting because of how subtle film scores can be and yet how vital they are to a movie. The psychology of music is one of the most important cinematic techniques in film. The emotional and thematic potential of these techniques is limitless, and I've only scratched the surface. So take your favorite film, watch it again, and pay close attention to the music and how it enhanced the film, maybe without you even noticing. How does that sound?
Hello dear listeners and welcome to the 9th episode of the podcast Fans About Films. I'm, as always, Lasse Vogt, the creator and host, and I have a new guest. Please introduce yourself.
Well, hi there. Thanks for having me on. I'm Benson Farris. I'm the manager of Go Soundtracks, and excited to be talking with you guys today.
That's great. Thank you very, very much. Yeah, I discovered your stuff on Twitter, and regarding all the stuff you post, I got the impression that you might be a little bit into film music.
Might be.
Maybe.
Who knows?
But because it's always great how you post your updates, and I get actually updates I wouldn't get from somewhere else, and so I'm like very excited when you say like, hey, this composer got hired to do this, and here's the news to this. That's actually pretty cool since I'm following you. So we have a couple of topics today, which would make for a good episode. But first, why don't you tell me and the listeners what your background with film scores is, and how you came to reviewing them.
Oh, sure, certainly. I really love everything about film. I work in film production professionally here, and really just every aspect, the filming, the pre-production, the post-production, everything about it. So naturally, I, of course, love the music of it as the main type of music that I enjoy. I enjoy other types of music here and there, but by far my collection is primarily film music that I listen to. And I just feel very passionate about it. I know that it drives the story. It helps enrich everything about the movie, hopefully, in a lot of cases. And I want to help share that love with other people. I started Go Soundtracks back in 2011, and the goal is really to sort of be a compendium of resources about film music. So people can go right there and easily see everything they need to know about what's currently going on in the world of film music, whether it's a announcement for a composer being hired on for something, or a concert series, a soundtrack release, discussions that are going on, maybe some new revelation about some theme or motif that people have noticed in something. I just want all of that to be right there for people to glean and discover.
Yeah, that's a noble task, and in my opinion, you really succeeded at that, because it's very fun.
Well, thank you.
No problem. It's really fun reading all of that, and also when I visited your site, it was quite interesting that you posted kind of reviews to soundtracks, but they weren't as a single listening experience, but how the music, how your impression was while you were watching the movie, without listening to the soundtrack individually. And that's actually pretty rare, I think, writing reviews like that.
Yeah, I feel like that's the main way that people listen to this type of music is in the picture itself. We love listening to it in soundtracks, but the way a lot of people are introduced is through the movie. And so I wanted to give a fresh perspective like that. I'm frequently invited to go to advanced screenings for movies here locally. And so I try to, in my reviews, put a spin on that to make sure I cover the film music in some way.
Oh, that's amazing. That's really, really, really interesting. And yeah, it's actually also pretty clever because on my site, which is called scoregeek.wordpress.com, I, of course, writing reviews to the soundtracks as themselves. And of course, when I'm writing the reviews, I have seen the movie, and I can write something about like how it connects with the audience and everything, and what job it does in the movie, you know, good or bad. And also, you know, you have to see the movie to get some of the themes in context, because I almost every time listen to the soundtracks before I go see the movie, so I have some kind of connection beforehand, so I can listen to the music in the movie and go like, oh, there's this theme, oh, this is for this character and to that situation.
Of course.
Yeah, but and sometimes once I actually made a mistake, and luckily I didn't post a review until I saw the movie a second time, because when I reviewed the soundtrack to the third Hobbit movie, there was a new theme. And when I first listened to the soundtrack after I watched the movie for the first time, I connected it with the orcs. And then I saw the movie a second time and figured out, oh, it's actually connected to the dwarves and how they have kind of turned, you know, aggressive, and they are building the wall and everything. It was connected to them. And I was like, oh, thank God I watched the movie a second time before I posted the review, because that would have been a mistake.
Yeah, that happens all the time. It's tough to fully understand a theme the first time watching something.
Yeah, totally. And this is this might be a cool question. How did you get first attached to this kind of music? Or can you remember when and how?
Oh, that's really tough. It's hard to think of a time when I didn't really feel passionately about it. Like a lot of people, I'd say my earliest experience really noticing it was through Star Wars.
All right.
It's hard to think of music that was better than that. Like, you might have a soundtrack that you enjoy more, but there's just such a skill and class to the music in that entire series. That'd probably be the earliest, is where I enjoyed it, but there's been more and more over time where I'll glean something here or there that'll really strike me passionately and help to drive that forward more. I feel like Lion King was a big one there. Pirates of the Caribbean was huge for me. How I was able to incorporate so many different themes in there and use them throughout the entire thing. I'm a huge fan of themes, of course. That's the first thing I listen to. That's the first thing I want to find. Once I can really grab onto a handful of themes from a score, then I feel like I know it and can really embrace the entire thing as a whole.
Yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts. When I first connected to film music, I actually can pinpoint the exact scores that got me into them, and those were when I watched Chicken Run on DVD as a kid.
Fantastic.
That was actually pretty much the first movie I realized how good the music was, because all the Disney musicals I watched before that, I don't really count, because, you know, musicals, that's kind of their thing, you know, embracing the music and the singing and everything. So that was the first time it was actually just the score that caught my attention. And shortly after that, it was the score to the animated version of Sinbad, both composed by Harry Gregson Williams, and a Chicken One, it was also John Powell. So I actually, that movie, Sinbad, I watched in the cinema, and I was really amazed by the music, and it got caught in my head for actually quite a long time. And the first soundtrack CD I actually owned was the first Harry Potter by John Williams, and was like a crappy illegal CD copy my mom got me, and it didn't always work, but that was the first soundtrack CD I owned. And after that, over the years, I got attached to that genre more and more, and my collection grew and grew, and now I'm just like you, I'm mostly listening to film music or to songs I discover through film. You know, most like the Guardians of the Galaxy soundtracks, most of those songs I didn't know beforehand because, you know, they don't play this really on the radio where I live.
Oh, sure.
And so those kind of old school songs from the 70s and 80s, I actually discover through movies, because nowadays it's like the modern song thing that gets played on the radio, and I'm not really into that, with some exceptions. But yeah, those were first experiences, and then a few years back I actually started to write semi-professional reviews, and I got better and better at that, and I have a few readers who really appreciate my work, and it's fun, and it's also quite difficult, but you know, it's it helps me to connect with the music more, you know, where you actually take the time to listen to the whole CD, and sometimes that's quite challenging. 2016 was an especially rough year. There were like 5 soundtracks I just couldn't stand, but I had to listen to all of them to write a proper review. The two.
Oh, sure. There's always a few of those.
What would you say were the 2 worst soundtracks of 2016 you listened to?
Oh, dang. That's tough. I'd have to look up my list of what I tried to listen to as many as possible, obviously, but I have to look up what were the big ones of that year. I know there were a lot of them. I don't think it was a horrible year, though. I think there were plenty of great ones. I'm looking at my list right now. I don't want to speak out of turn and say something that was released in 2015, for example. I'll be able to get back to that if you want to talk about something else for a second.
Oh yeah, no problem. Because I have actually kind of like a top 3. I have forgotten 2 of them. So but I have 3 soundtracks. I just for the most part couldn't stand from 2016. That was for one, Batman.
What was yours?
Batman v Superman.
Oh sure, there's a couple from that I like. Only like maybe 3 tracks total
same.
that I enjoy very much. And most of them are just because it very heavily uses themes, and it's a little more action-packed and get your blood pumping, but that's about it.
Yeah.
It was a pretty mediocre score.
And the other one, the second worst, was Inferno.
Okay, yes. I would put that in the top 3 worst of the year. I was highly disappointed by that because I was a huge fan of Angels and Demons.
And also Da Vinci Code.
The movie's all right. But the score, I just adore that. 160 BPM is possibly my favorite choir piece that exists.
Yeah.
No offense to Duel of the Fates or anything like that, but
both that and Da Vinci.
There's so many great styles in it, and I love the use of instrumentation. If you just listen to each individual instrument, as they come in, the use of drums, the winds and strings rushing together. It's just got a very ancient feel to it, but very propelling motion to it to really drive the plot the whole time. You can hear it through almost every scene of that movie.
Yeah, totally.
And so it's just so disappointing that Inferno comes and there's almost nothing of any of that. Not even the theme from the original Da Vinci Code. It was a great representation of how much Zimmer has deteriorated his style over time. He's still got some great ones. I really enjoyed The Boss Baby this year.
Yeah.
He's done some good ones, but it just feels like he's very much not the Zimmer we used to know.
Yeah, but both Angels and Demons and Da Vinci Code are actually, in my opinion, 2 of his best works of his career. I really enjoy both of them. You know, actually in Da Vinci Code, it works much better as a concert tracksuit on CD. When you hear it like that. And it's and in the movie it works very well. And Angels and Demons, it's just a great action score with the core elements and everything. But nowadays, and we will we will come back to Zimmer later. Let me first list my worst score of 2016, which was the first one. Which was the first one I gave 0 points to. That's Jet Curzel's Assassin's Creed.
Oh yes, that one's highly disappointing. Not just because the movie has so much potential. It's Assassin's Creed. Everyone loves it. It's got such a rich history that you have to glean upon. So there's a lot of material that you could use for music there. But also because of the games themselves, they've had some fantastic composers from Kid, Tyler, Balfe. We've had so many wonderful composers contributing to the video games, and that would have been fantastic if we got some of their themes, if we got even some of them to have done the music. But oh well, that movie was awful all the way around. We had 4 video game movies last year, and all of them were awful.
I didn't think Warcraft was awful. I thought it worked as a basic, kind of run-of-the-mill fantasy action movie. I never played the games, but I thought Warcraft as a movie experience was decent.
Sure, May Awful's a bit much on that one.
I don't remember the other ones. Which ones were the other ones except for Assassin's Creed?
There was a Ratchet and Clank movie.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
And there was Angry Birds.
Oh yeah, right, I forgot. Yeah, Angry Birds I thought had a couple of decent laughs. But yeah, all around, it's not a good movie, but I wouldn't call it awful. It's just, bland. And the funniest thing is actually that they made the movie. Hey, there's an Angry Birds movie that exists. But I thought the music of Angry Birds, the movie, was pretty good.
Yeah, Hydro Ferraria did a fine job. I like some of the themes they tried to use. I feel like he's a very underspoken composer, that he does great work, but almost hard to notice in his scores. I was able to meet with him a little while ago, and he was talking about his work on Despicable Me, and wow, he just did so much work with the textures and the instruments that I would have never noticed.
Yeah.
So it's cool to see how you applied that to Angry Birds also.
Yeah, because I actually noticed the score while watching the movie, maybe also because there weren't that much jokes going on in it, so I was looking for a distraction, and I actually noticed, hey, the score is pretty good. It actually ended up in my top 10 of that year, somewhere in the middle.
Wow.
Yeah, I actually liked it that much. I liked the creative instrumentations, I liked the themes, I liked everything he did with, and also how he, at the beginning, just incorporated the original game theme, and then pretty much abandoned it with a few tiny exceptions, but I liked how he did his own thing with it.
Sure.
I thought the score was really good.
Included briefly there, just tie us back to it and then move on.
Yeah, but that's actually a little better than something that other composers do. But whatever. Can you list any other score you thought was pretty terrible from 2016?
So terrible is not the word I used to describe this one, but disappointing is the word I'm going for here, and that is my favorite movie of 2016, Captain America: Civil War.
I get you. All right.
I enjoy the movie a ton. I feel like it's a very great culmination of all that Marvel had been doing up to that point, but it's just like I wish that it was a musical culmination as well. There's so much potential in all these heroes coming together, and overall it's just not a score where any track really stands out to me that much, and it feels like much of it can fall into the same category as Winter Soldier. If you played me just random cue from Winter Soldier or Civil War, unless it's a handful of standout cues, I might not be able to really tell the difference, and I'm extremely happy that Henry Jackman will not be returning for the Russo brothers' next Marvel film of Avengers Infinity War. I'm so glad to have Alan Silvestri back. I don't think Henry Jackman did a terrible job. I feel like for the movie it is, it's fine. It's just, it could have been so much more. It's a matter of potential rather than what it actually is.
Yeah, it could have been better, but I also really liked it, and I liked it especially in comparison to Winter Soldier. I actually think there's quite a big of difference between Civil War and Winter Soldier when it comes to the music. In Winter Soldier, it's obvious what he's trying to do with kind of like the harsh electronics, and he wants to make it sound like a modern kind of Cold War thriller, where in Civil War he goes back to his hero stylistics he also like embraced in Kingsman or Big Hero 6. So you actually there's actually a difference between the two of them when you listen, not all that closely. But you're right, there could have been much more potential, especially with the theme for Spider-Man he introduces, but is so kind of vague that the first time I listened to the score, I could barely connect it to Spider-Man, and only like the second time I watched the movie, I was like, all right, this is the Spider-Man theme by him. And of course, Michael Giacchino did a much better job with that the next year. But I thought the theme itself, was fine. But that's going into the whole weird Marvel music canon that's kind of non-existent for the most part.
Exactly.
It's so difficult to talk about that. But
yes, it's so weird that Thor 2 has more of the Captain America theme than Captain America 2 does.
Yeah, and also like how we will hear pretty much the third Thor theme this year. When the third Thor movie comes along, I'm pretty sure they will abandon the theme from the second movie, and they will do a new one. Who knows, And
I highly doubt we're going to have a return of Craig Armstrong's Incredible Hulk theme.
Yeah, I doubt that too. That's because they abandoned that as soon as they recast the role and everything. So Hulk doesn't really have that big of a musical identity in the Avengers movies. Maybe he has like some instrumental textures. I know he has a love theme shared with Natasha in Avengers Age of Ultron. They have a love theme together, but I don't think he has a theme on his own.
Sure, and something like that probably wouldn't come back in a movie where Black Widow is not in it anyways. But I don't want to bash on Mark Mothersbaugh at all. I'm excited for what he'll do. This seems to be a new style. I feel like the Thor franchise does need a bit of rejuvenation, and so this will be a great opportunity for that series.
Yeah.
So I'm still hopeful. Just normally with Marvel, I pretty much try not to be looking forward too much to themes coming back unless a composer is coming back who has proven that he will do that, such as Alan Silvestri.
Yeah, but I actually, when I heard that they hired him back on for the Infinity War movies, I was actually quite excited because I loved his score for, of course, Captain America and also the first Avengers movie. And Marvel has gotten better with incorporating old themes, appropriately. But I was really disappointed. I loved the score for Spider-Man Homecoming, but I was disappointed that they introduced the by now fourth theme for Iron Man. And
I count as fifth if you count the one from Avengers.
Yeah, right. He has kind of like an own theme in Avengers. You're right. Yeah, but and also I'm sorry. I love the Spider-Man Homecoming score, but I really couldn't stand the Iron Man theme that Giacchino used, because to me it sounded much too corny and old-fashioned and like something that would fit maybe like in The Incredibles or something like that. Way too naive, It's just it totally rubbed me the wrong way.
Sure, I didn't have a problem with it on its own. I would have loved to hear Brian Tyler's or even Ramin Djawadi's theme come back. But I thought it was all right. It sort of showed Peter's perspective on who Tony Stark and Iron Man is to him, that this isn't Tony's story. This is the first time that we have Iron Man as a main character in the movie, but he's not like really the protagonist. And so it's cool to see that reflected a different way, I suppose.
Yeah, I took it like that too, that it's pretty much the theme is Iron Man, how he is in Peter Parker's eyes. But I took it like that too. But to me, it was way too on the nose and way too old-fashioned. And yeah, it didn't work for me, even like in the movie itself. And when I listened to it individually, it was all the more glaring how much it didn't work for me. But what can you do? Everything else about that score was great. What you wrote about it is exactly right. It has one of the best villain themes. Also, the movie has one of the best Marvel villains to date, and
sure.
And it's just one of those scores where you can really see people coming out of a theater and humming it, because you don't have that much with movies nowadays, which we will talk about later. You found exactly the right words. Why don't we talk about some of your... can you maybe list like your top 3 soundtracks of all time? Your big evergreens?
Of all time. So I've actually been thinking about this a lot recently. I think my top 3 has probably changed a lot in the past couple of months. At the moment, what I'm pretty solid on being my top favorite score, this is of course not an insult to anything else, but a compliment to this one, is The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring by Howard Shore. Everything about all of those scores are fantastic. In the most literal sense, it's a fantastical score. It represents a fantasy world, and it really brought a revolution to this era.
Yeah.
I probably would have not ever put Howard Shore as high on my ranking of composers without that.
Yeah, totally. Same here.
One of the marvels of film music overall, and I put The Lord of the Rings as my favorite trilogy musically. It barely beats out Star Wars. I'm sure you've read Doug Adams' book, The Music of The Lord of the Rings. I have it right here next to me. The Lord of the Rings films.
Yeah, I haven't read all of it. I don't own it, but I know the book well. I have a friend who
Sure.
quotes it all the time. So it's actually pretty. That's a great book, and I love his writings about the music.
I feel like that's what really solidified that for me. How he talks about all the themes, how they're used, how they're weaved into every scene, how there's really barely a moment without music, and it just enriches every moment so beautifully that we have all these textures that represent so many cultures and races and events and ideas. It's just such a masterpiece. I have no idea how someone's able to do that, how this comes at someone, especially given the time frame of how... Sure, they had a lot of time working on it, but the movies were shot so fast that it's so impressive that he is able to put that out so quickly. And I find Fellowship of the Ring so impressive in how he is able to start themes there that just grow so much throughout an entire series. And that's something you can really only do having confidence in working on a series from beginning to end. It's just a marvel, and I can't say enough good things about those scores, and particularly Fellowship of the Ring, though.
Oh yeah. That's amazing. When you talked about theme development, because I think the fact helped that they shot all the movies at the same time. So I guess he was able to look at some footage from this movie, some footage from that, and also reading through the scripts and looking at the concepts they did. So he was able to kind of tease certain themes, how you can actually hear some themes that become very important in the third movie. You can actually hear in the first movie where Boromir is talking to Aragorn about the White Tower and everything, and And yeah, when it comes to those, they're also my favorite trilogy musically. I love those movies and the scores to death. I actually have the first and the third movie. I have the complete recordings. They were
fantastic.
They were expensive as all hell, but they were worth the money. I don't have the second one yet because on the German Amazon you can't get it like under €1,000, and that's just insane. So I'm not paying for that right now. But the first and the third movie I got the complete recording scores, and that's just that's so amazing. When it comes to my top 3 scores of all time, I would count The Lord of the Rings as 1, because to me it's also like best seen as like one long movie. And the second,
sure, I find that a little cheating.
well, whatever, because then you wouldn't be able to, when you would make like a top 10 best scores of all time for you, then the first 3 would be Lord of the Rings, and that would be kind of unfair to a lot of other composers you like. So whenever I do a top 10 like this, I count the Lord of the Rings trilogy as 1, because the second one, that will be an evergreen for me all the time. This score will always be second place. That's the first How to Train Your Dragon.
Yes, that is my third place.
Awesome. I don't think I need to say anything about it, except I didn't see the movie in theaters. I just wasn't interested because I guess the advertising didn't make it very good or something. So
yeah, I didn't see it in theaters either.
So and one time I stumbled across the score on iTunes, and I was already a fan of John Powell, but I just wasn't really paying attention all that much to what was going on with the movie, and then I just listened to the first track and was blown away, and I was like, I need to own this score, and I bought it right away. And then I was like, and I need to own this movie, and I bought it like the following day and watched it twice. It was just amazing. First hearing the music, not knowing what the movie was about, pretty much, and just discovering the themes in speaking in both terms, themes of the movie and themes of the score. Just that's for all time my second favorite film score ever.
Oh yes, I adore How to Train Your Dragon so much. I could listen to it every day and I'd probably never get old. When I first, obviously I listened to it as soon as the score comes out, just how I am, and enjoyed it a lot, but I feel like I didn't really solidify that until having seen the movie and seeing how the story works with that. But also my friends, of course, a few of them had seen it, and pretty much every single one of them told me how great the music is. Of course, they knew I was a fan of film music, so they were telling me because of that, but also just having so many people telling me that, it's like, wow, it's so powerful that this music doesn't just stand out to film music fans, but that people who are more casual moviegoers are also embracing it so much. Just makes me so happy that John Powell is able to do something that resonated with people so much.
Yeah, and my third... sorry.
I was just saying, I especially enjoy it when riding my bike. I'm a big fan of... I'm a big cyclist. I enjoy doing that all the time. And wow, listening to Test Drive, riding my bike down the road, that's a thrilling experience that always love. I feel like if I weren't so big into riding my bike and doing that kind of thing with the wind rushing by me, being able to listen to that, I might not be as much of a fan of this score because of how I connect it with those experiences.
Yeah, all right. I totally got you. Yeah, that's actually pretty cool. But figuring out, the third place, it's kind of difficult because it kind of varies. Because like for a long time it was like Danny Elfman's Big Fish, because of how
can't go wrong there.
because of how I connected with the music in the film, because the ending just tears me up every time. But recently I listened to, after a long time, I listened to John Williams' The Last Crusade again, which is actually my favorite score of his. And
I go back and forth on that a lot. If I like Raiders or Last Crusade more. Probably Last Crusade at the moment, but you could ask me in a month, that may be different.
Yeah, because the Last Crusade score seems to me much more well defined, because where he actually has a distinctive themes for certain things. You know, you actually have kind of like the Nazi march in there that actually sounds very, very good and very appropriate. And you have a great Venice action sequence where he works those instruments in, and you have a great Grail theme, and you have amazing tank battle music. And and also the first sequence on the train that has just one of his best action scores ever. And yeah,
such a great way to open that.
Oh, wonderful. So I think The Last Crusade is actually my favorite of his, and also it's my favorite Indiana Jones movie. But yeah,
agreed there. Yes,
I kind of go back and forward on that. I also love, Ratatouille, Sinbad. What is it? Chicken Run? Like I said, I also love the Kung Fu Panda scores. The third.
It was a little disappointing without John Powell's voice in there, but
yeah, but they do a good job, paying homage to him. How they work it in the orchestrations and also the new themes they use. I thought the score was good, but of course I was disappointed that he kind of took an off time there. He wasn't available for it. So, but they did a good job with it. I love the third Pirate score, and also WALL-E is one of my evergreens. That's one of my favorite Thomas Newman scores. So yeah, it's kind of difficult for me figuring out a third place because there are just so many options. But what would your third place be in terms of film scores of all time?
Well, sure. Just a second, going back to Last Crusade, two tracks that really stand out to me are the Scherzo for Orchestra and Motorcycle, possibly my favorite names for a cue ever. And Keeping Up with the Joneses, how this is actually a really serious plot and there's a lot of dark moments, but both of those just have a liveliness, such life to them, to add some fun into this, because that's what I think is the appeal of this series, is it's fun. And so those just really exemplify that so well. I enjoy both of those a lot. The whole score is great, of course, but those are two that always stand out to me when I'm going through the whole soundtrack. I love when you get to those moments and the cues around them, because they use moments of those in the cues around it, which I enjoy about that and a lot of John Williams' work, is that oftentimes a cue won't stand out on its own. It'll frequently be built up to, that we can anticipate what's going to happen, that themes and moments and some things that make this track great will be heard in little particles before and after to get the audience ready for it.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. And also, like, that's also the motorcycle scene is one of my favorite scenes in the movie, especially the ending when he beats the last guy, and then he looks to his father and he's just looking at him in this kind of like in this weird way, like what are you doing, and whatever, and then just going back to his watch, and the music kind of comically repeats some of the phrases of the whole track, and I love it. That's one of those parts when my father sees it, he cracks up every time.
Yeah. So going back, I said before my third favorite is How to Train Your Dragon.
Yeah.
Number 2 is Empire Strikes Back.
Oh.
It just has to be.
All right. For obvious reasons.
That's what I think really solidified Star Wars for me, both in the movies, but for being one of the great pinnacles of film music, this series. How we had this original movie, all of the tracks are great, all of the score that John Williams wrote, and everyone loves it. And then you get to Empire Strikes Back, and he gives us so much more. We get Yoda's theme, we get Lando, we of course get Darth Vader's theme. We get so much more that shows how much more rich this can be. It's like he wrote a 10 out of 10 score originally, and somehow he takes it to the next level. And that's what I really find the most impressive. They didn't run out of material. John Williams never does, somehow.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. That's really, really amazing. How he topped his work on the original. No argument from me there. That's actually a pretty good little list you got there. And
there's lots of standout cues in there. We've got the Battle of Hoth. There's the asteroid field, which everyone has to put in their high ranking for individual cues. We've got Yoda's theme, the Clash of the Lightsabers at the end, which has ended so many video games and trailers, and possibly the greatest end credits suite that has ever been written. It's like hard to even watch the movie without humming it from beginning to end. It's such a rich experience.
Yeah, it totally is. That's a cool. Those are cool choices. Which composers do you like the most when you are looking for what movie comes out, and you see who the composers, which ones, or let me put it this way, because I have certain composers which are sometimes the only reason why I actually watch a movie. I see, they write they write the music for this one, and that's a movie I'm totally not into, based on the advertising, based on the theme, but it's that composer, so I will go see it. Which composers are like that to you?
Sure, there's definitely a lot. I try to catch as many movies that I know will have that type of music that I'll love. But I'd say my top 5 composers ever are naturally John Williams. I don't trust someone who doesn't say that John Williams is their favorite composer. Sure, that's a little extreme, that's not really serious, but it's hard to say otherwise. Hans Zimmer. Mm-hmm. I've said he's had some low moments recently, but the early parts of his career still keep him up there, although he's very much competing to keep his second place, because my third place is Michael Giacchino. I adore him so much, and he has not written a bad score in several years.
Yeah.
Fourth, Jerry Goldsmith.
Mm-hmm.
Fifth is James Horner, so sad that 4 and 5 are
not longer with us,
but
yeah.
They have such a powerful repertoire regardless. 6 is John Powell, then Alan Silvestri, probably Brian Tyler after that. I'd have to figure out probably Danny Elfman and Howard Shore would round out 8 and 9.
Oh yeah, all right.
I'm probably good with that.
That's cool. That's really good. What? No love for damn it! Who's? Yeah. I just want to mess with you here. So I'm looking for like a really obscure name to throw in, and you're like, are you serious? But I just can't think of one. That's too bad. Let me see here. There must be some who can't think of one. Too bad. Yeah, my for the longest time, Danny Elfman was my favorite composer. He actually still is, because he's one of those who I will see a movie because he does the music. If I wouldn't be a film critic, I wouldn't have watched 50 Shades of Grey if he didn't do the music. But when I saw that he did the score, I was like, oh damn it, now I have actually one more reason to watch it. So yeah, he's one of those guys. I've pretty much seen every movie he did just because he did it. Second one would be John Powell, for the most part. Harry Gregson Williams is somewhere in there. John Williams, of course. I also really I also really like Michael Giacchino. He's one of my evergreens. I also love most of Alan Silvestri's work. Hans Zimmer, I love a lot of his stuff. Let me see. Henry Jackman, I like a lot of his scores a lot. And Alexandre Desplat has quite a lot of gems, where he's pretty much the go-to guy if you want an Oscar nomination for best score in your movie. Because that's actually, I think that's the reason why Harry Gregson Williams didn't score Argo, because before that he was the composer for Ben Affleck's movies, and when Ben Affleck realized, this is actually pretty good material, I think I will go the safer route and pick Alexandre Desplat for that, because I'm sure he will give me an extra Oscar nomination, his name in the credits, and it did, and it paid off in that way. And then after that he returned.
The movie itself has it's about filmmaking, obviously, so it has a artsy style that I feel like fits Desplat a bit better there.
Yeah.
I don't doubt Gregson Williams would have done a very good job. I would have loved to have heard that. But I enjoy almost everything that Desplat does.
Yeah.
I'm very sad that I had very mixed feelings about him leaving Rogue One, but it's hard to be disappointed by a Giacchino score.
Yeah, and also it wasn't his fault, It was just he didn't have time. It was just, they kept changing things, and just he hadn't the time to adapt to that, and so it was like a last minute decision. And I'm pretty sure some of his ideas for Star Wars ended up in Valerian, which will be in my top 10 best scores 2017, coming the end of the year, I think.
I'm sure there's a lot of factors into his replacement, but I do agree, Valerian, one of the best elements of it is Desplat's music, and I'm very happy to hear him do a space adventure, even if he wasn't able to do the Star Wars one, which I would hope they do one at some point, seeing as Star Wars doesn't seem anywhere close to concluding at all.
Yeah, I'm happy John Powell got the gig for the Han Solo movie, but I'm sure...
Very unexpected, too.
Yeah, very unexpected indeed. But I'm happy. I'm very, very happy, and I'm looking forward to what Desplat's next project might be. Who knows? Because for the next Godzilla movie, that who does that one? Is it because not the composer but the director. Michael Dougherty does the next Godzilla movie, and his go-to composer is Douglas Pipes. But on IMDb, it's not updated yet. There is still not a composer list, and so I'm curious: will he go with the original Godzilla composer Alexandre Desplat, or will he bring Douglas Pipes in? With either choice, I would be more than happy, because Douglas Pipes is he has still just a few films under his belt, and he always did a superb job. Krampus was one of my top 10 scores of 2015. And he actually retweeted my very, very glowing review, and I was very happy about that. I wrote my review, and a few days later he retweeted it and said thank you.
Well, that's good to hear. Always nice when the composer really interacts like that.
Yeah, that's totally cool.
You know that their work is appreciated.
That's very cool. And also, one composer, one of my favorites, I forgot to mention, and I think he's one of the most underrated composers. And he has done so many movies and so many great scores, and that's James Newton Howard. I think that man.
He's amazing. I don't think he's underrated.
I don't.
By any means, I feel like he's still very celebrated with his work from Hunger Games, The Dark Knight, earlier movies, and of course all of his work that he's done with M. Night Shyamalan.
Yeah, most of his scores for the Shyamalan movies were very, very good. Even After Earth had a very solid score. One that the movie obviously didn't deserve for various reasons, but he didn't have acid,
I feel like probably among my very favorites from him is The Fugitive.
Yeah.
He keeps up on this pulsating style that helps drive the movie forward with all of his orchestral tones, but then he's got a few moments, which has the door, where it sounds almost a little jazzy, and you can really feel the wheels turning between these two opposing forces that are trying to keep one step ahead of the other.
Yeah.
A few cues in there. I can't remember the names all of a sudden, but overall, that score really grips me.
Yeah, I just recently watched The Fugitive for the very first time, and I really got a kick out of the music. And it's also, with the jazzy elements you mentioned, it's very appropriate for the time the movie was made and also like kind of the setting. So yeah, you're totally right with that. And also James.
Yeah, after his work on Salt and The Fugitive, I was very disappointed in his Bourne Legacy score. I was expecting something much more spy thriller. I expect this to be almost a culmination in a way of his work that he'd done leading up to that, but it just didn't hold up compared to Powell's work on the series.
Oh, because I haven't seen or heard that one yet. That's one of his I don't own. I liked his score for The Tourist. I thought that worked in context. And he's also one of those composers who has pretty much scored every genre there is. He has done some comedies, he has done animation, he has done action, fantasy, thriller, romance. I am looking.
Oh, sure, he's very diverse.
Yeah, I'm looking through my list of his scores, and I can't find a genre he hasn't scored yet. He has done also horror. With Signs. Obviously having horror elements, and also like kind of. Intentionally The Happening is a horror movie, but in conclusion, you have to say no, it's a comedy.
In a way.
I watch whenever I watch that movie, I watch it as a comedy because that's what it is. It's so fun, such a fun movie,
I'm glad you find a lot of humor from it.
Do you like the movie? Genuinely?
Overall, it's all right. It don't really hold up to a lot of the best of his work, but it's fine, man. It's just not my style from him. I've been let down by Shyamalan too often, so I may put that in that same category.
Yeah, because I do a pretty good impression of Mark Wahlberg in The Happening.
Well, anyone can.
Yeah, everyone. Where'd the beast go? It's crazy, right? They just disappeared. What? No. It's too easy. It's way too easy. Did you see one of those behind-the-scenes clips from The Happening, where it's like a dialogue between Mark Wahlberg and Shyamalan? Because he's like...
I'm not sure I have.
Because there's one clip, I can't remember exactly, but it was like Mark Wahlberg is asking something like, why are we going to this abandoned house? What are we trying to find here? Why are we here? And Shyamalan is looking at him. He's like, dude, canned foods. And Wahlberg rolls.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and Wahlberg.
I've heard of that. I don't think I've actually seen that.
And Wahlberg just rolls his eyes and like, oh, whatever, man. That's just amazing. But yeah,
oh, sure.
he's one of those composers who rarely let me down yet. He's in one of my evergreens. I like a lot of the Jerry Goldsmith stuff, especially when he does, like action mixed with fantasy or something, like stuff like Mulan, The Mummy, 13th Warrior that was one of the first scores I've heard of him. There are a few of those who will pretty much get. One composer I never quite got into, and I don't quite know why. Maybe I can explain why. Is Marco Beltrami, and I'm not sure why. It's just like a lot of his scores just don't make an impression on me when I watch the movies. And also, it's weird to me that he scores so many bad horror remakes. Like a lot of Japanese, original Japanese stuff, that they remade into an American movie. He scores so much bad horror remakes, and I don't know why. And there's one score of his I just love, and that's Seventh Son, and that wasn't properly released actually.
I would say, I've said this before about him, I'd say that he's almost an acquired taste. I like a lot of his work. There's some of it which I don't feel like I've grasped onto. I know there's a lot of people that really love everything he does, and that's fantastic. I'm glad that those directors are able to find someone who can use that style. The composer is always supposed to cater to the director's vision, and I feel like he does that well, but maybe I'm not latching onto it well enough. I probably need to revisit some of his older stuff, get a better mix of it. I feel like I'm just focusing on his newer work, such as Logan that we had this year. It works in context, but maybe it's harder to embrace when it's just on the soundtrack album.
Yeah, same here. And also, it's fascinating how in our generation, actually, there are several, because a lot of these composers, they were established, kind of like before we were born. Danny Elfman already had done several scores before I came into being. Same with like John Williams and Hans Zimmer and all that stuff. So it's always great when in your generation there is, a young composer kind of rising up and you can witness it. Two of those for me were Lorne Balfe and Ramin Djawadi, because they started in a time where I was actively listening to film music, and so when Djawadi first came along, I was like, who is this guy? With like stuff like Fright Night and also Iron Man, and then you follow their careers and see how they just keep getting better and better. Djawadi landing a gig with a Game of Thrones series and embracing that, and just now he is the go-to guy for Legendary Pictures, so he scores some of those big movies like Pacific Rim, Warcraft, and recently The Great Wall, which was one of the best scores of 2017 in my opinion. And
yeah, I've enjoyed so much of Djawadi's work. He did a fantastic job starting off this Marvel Cinematic Universe. I enjoy his Iron Man score far more than I think most people do, and I would be overjoyed if his main theme that we hear in that, particularly in Mark II, that track, which is like possibly one of my favorite tracks of all time, like probably in my top 50, surprisingly. It feels so good when you're like working or studying or like programming, doing anything that's intensive. It just feels so great, as does a lot of that score there. Another one that I feel is highly underrated is his scores to the TV series Person of Interest.
Ah, yeah, right. He did that. Yeah, I because I don't watch that show, so I actually forget about that. But yeah, I'm sure that has its fans in terms of the music.
Oh, sure. The whole show is about this super intelligent computer, and so Djawadi was really able to give the voice to that entity in that way that really showed off this different stuff, and it's cool to see how he's doing that at the same time as Game of Thrones. And so you've got this fantasy element, fantasy action darker element going into Game of Thrones, and on this sci-fi technology side, he put all that into Person of Interest. We have some cool themes and textures, and I feel like that's really the charm of that whole score, is how he has these textures that represent things. He does have themes all throughout, but there's very much a style to what he does in every scene to show what's going on there. The whole show is a great use of music, not just from him, but from the music team to put in good songs and other works to capture whatever the moment is. I was a big fan of the whole series.
Oh, all right. Thanks for a recommendation. I will check it out soon enough. Also, it's quite cool how he managed to develop a voice, a distinct style. You actually can now listen to his scores, especially his newer ones, and you can identify that's a score by him. That's actually pretty amazing. You know, when you actually can play some of his music to someone who isn't quite that into film music, and he or she recognizes, oh, that's from the composer who wrote this, right? And I'm like, yes, exactly. That's pretty cool, because I have a friend who we both really got into the score for The Great Wall, and then I showed her some music from I think the 6th season of Game of Thrones. And she was like, is that the composer of The Great Wall? And I was like, yes. So that's cool how nowadays you can identify his style immediately. And also with Lorne Balfe, it was kind of similar. When I think his first big score was Megamind, where he still did it with Hans Zimmer, as kind of like, that's something Zimmer does regularly. At first he has all these assistant composers who help him on his standalone works, and then he kind of does a goodbye score with them, as equal composers. He did that with John Powell on several occasions. He did that with Harry Gregson Williams. He did that recently with Steve Mazzaro in The Boss Baby, and he did that with Lorne Balfe on Megamind. And I was listening to that score and I was like, who is that Balfe guy? Who is this guy? And then he did things on his own, and I quickly got into his style, because he has a distinct voice also. You can easily identify, you hear some stuff from Home, and also like in the Lego Batman movie. And it's very easy to see, oh, that's one of his. And he does it really, really well, especially when it's something with animation or anything like that. And also his video game work is very impressive. Like you mentioned, of Assassin's Creed. And it is a shame that they didn't get one of those composers who did the game music for the movie. Yeah, because you have established film composers who could have easily done this. But, I get it, like the director went with his brother because they worked together already, and this is a movie that could promise big prestige, didn't do it, it was awful, and the music was too, but I get that mindset. It was just unfortunate that at least this terrible movie didn't have a good score, but instead it matched up exactly, and that's not something you would like, because some awful movies have great soundtracks. Just listen to Van Helsing or Jupiter Ascending or Pan, John Powell's Pan, and he was a replacement composer on that, and it was my favorite score of 2015.
Wow.
Yeah.
One that always stands out to me is Journey 2, Andrew Lockington.
Oh yeah, that's yeah. He's also one of those who's kind of like who doesn't quite catch people's eyes and ears, and he always, when I hear his music, it's like, hey, this is cool music, and then I figure out it's Lockington, and I'm like, all right, because he always does a pretty good job, and it's such a shame that he doesn't have a lot of very good movies under his belt. It's kind of like those run-of-the-mill action things. You know, he did like the second Percy Jackson, and he did, what was it? That Dwayne Johnson movie with
San Andreas.
Yes, thank you. And he did Journey
and recently,
2.
Space Between Us.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but it's kind of a shame. He deserves some better stuff.
Definitely. I would love for him to someday do like one of the many superhero movies we're dealing with nowadays. There's plenty of opportunities for these composers. I'd love to see some of these sort of underappreciated names come more to the forefront.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also with Brian Tyler, did he ever do an animated kids movie? Did he ever do one of these? Because I think not, and that's really odd. Because I always
think of one.
Because
he did the Transformers Prime TV show.
Yeah, right. I think that can count for something, right? But he didn't do like a full animated movie, because he's done some movies, that are kind of like for kids, that kids can watch. Like he did the first Ninja Turtles, he did the recent Power Rangers movie, and he did Thor 2, and he did some of the Marvel stuff. And he did also horror stuff and, action. He did video games, but he didn't do like an animated movie. Yeah, but about Transformers Prime, I have it right here. Yeah,
but someday I feel like he has a great style, and I feel like he has very deep style. All this, you're not going to hear much lighthearted stuff from him most of the time.
Yeah, kind of.
It really goes into the lower registers. New York show, we hear lots of drums going on, so I feel like it does lend itself to a more live action style. You want something a little more, I know breezy is the right word, but you want something that's easier on kids when you're doing a animated movie, I suppose.
Yeah.
That's how I would see it.
Yeah, his percussive writing is amazing. It's just, it has so much depth and so much power. It's kind of like he writes for percussion, like kind of like John Power writes for brass. It's just so unique and nothing like anything you hear from any other composer.
Oh yeah, I feel like that's what makes him so perfect for the Fast and Furious movies.
Yeah.
You usually don't really notice the music, but it just sounds so much like exactly what should be for these crazy car adventures running down the road and these unbelievable action scenes. You just need those kind of sounds, because the cars and the people and the gunshots are so loud. You need a orchestral voice that will keep up with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we go, I think we can go into this one as kind of like to our last topic, kind of like a segue. What scores this year are you looking forward to that haven't come out yet, or from which composers?
Sure. Obviously, the big one, The Last Jedi.
Yeah, that goes without saying.
Of course, Force Awakens blew us out of the water, where we got to hear that fresh John Williams sound again for Star Wars, and it established a lot of themes that I am very excited to hear come back. I have a lot of confidence in Williams' ability to really develop those, especially the Jedi Steps, which just has so much potential.
Yeah, also Rey's theme is...
Few things make me sadder than a theme not living up to its potential, which I feel like we've had way too many of those recently. So that would obviously be the big one. I'm trying to look up exactly what's coming out for the rest of the year. We already mentioned, what's it called? We already mentioned Thor. Ragnarok.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Also, like
Mark Mothersbaugh has always been very underrated for me. That was one of the most unexpected composer announcements I've heard in a while.
Yeah,
he was announced for that.
For me too.
So off the wall. Like, I could have named probably 30 people. I probably could have named 50 people who I thought could have done this and would have never come across him. I feel like it's great. He just isn't the style that I would have envisioned for it.
Yeah, because when you look at the trailers for Free, it's not. I think the established style of him actually can fit, because he has always these creative electronic things going on. If you listen to stuff like the Lego Movie or like the 21 Jump Street movies,
Sure.
I think his style can match those scenarios pretty well, and the director is also one who is in this a creative way weird and quirky, so he needs a composer to match that, and I think it will match pretty perfectly when you think about that in that regard.
Oh yeah, I feel like Taika Waititi just has this off-the-wall, his own style that will really take Thor a new direction, make him a more likable character, which is probably something he needs after his undertreatment in Age of Ultron, and the other two Thor movies, which are no one's favorites. The first one's fine, the second one is possibly my least favorite Marvel movie.
Yeah, I'm not very, I don't think any of them are awful. There was a time where I kind of disliked the second one, but when it's kind of like, it's like I watch a movie sometimes with people who haven't seen it yet, and it's always a different reaction. When I first saw it in the theater, I liked it. Then when I watched it with a friend again, I didn't like it. When I watched it with my little brother and I liked it again. When I watched it with a friend of mine, I didn't like it. It's so weird.
The first or the second one? Which one are we talking about?
The second one. It's the second one.
The second one. It's a lot more enjoyable if you think of it as one wild Doctor Who episode gone wrong. With the London stuff, teleportation all the time, fantasy and dark elements put together, and of course the inclusion of Christopher Eccleston.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that. But that's also such a shame, because when you don't know it's him, you don't recognize it's him. It's kind of like he kind of disappears behind the makeup and behind the blandness of the character. And so you don't really recognize it. I think,
and the lack of character.
Yeah, because I think I watched it with a friend who is a huge fan of Doctor Who, and she didn't recognize him. And then she watched the end credits, and she was like, "What? That was Christopher Eccleston?" I was like, "Yeah." And that's a shame, when even a big fan of the series doesn't recognize him in this big budget movie. That's kind of a shame. I thought the design was fine, also like from his Dark Elf minions, but whatever. But that's a different topic. And I'm really looking forward to It by Benjamin Wallfish, because he's a composer who is also very interesting, who did a lot of own stuff, and then he kind of randomly handpicked the Hans Zimmer scores, and he was like, I will go along with this for a while now, even though I established myself as a good composer already. And so he did additional music to Dunkirk and Batman v Superman the last year, and now he has done this year already. What was it? Cure for Wellness, which was fantastic score. I just watched that movie.
Beautiful styles there.
Yeah. I just watched that movie for the first time a few days ago, because it didn't come to a theater near me, and I enjoyed the movie and I really enjoyed the music, and I'm looking forward to what he will do with It, because from the little bits of music that are released already, it sounds like the type of horror score I really like, where you have themes and it's in that way creepy, in the instrumental way, where he uses like a glockenspiel and actual instruments. It's not like that kind of, even though that kind of horror score really works in context, stuff like what Joseph B. Schauer does with the Conjuring movies, with all the James Wan horror movies, which are dissonant and dark and gritty and don't have themes, it's just, to heighten the tension and the fear. And I think those scores really, really work in context, but they don't make for a very interesting listening experience. And so I'm looking forward to what Wolfish does with it, which is based on a book that has also a very deep mythology and also rich themes. And I'm looking forward to where he will go with this.
Sure, I'm not a huge horror fan, but I can appreciate the music that are in it. I don't necessarily intend to see it, though I know a lot of people are looking forward to it. And I've heard good things from critics even about the music that Wolfish has composed. I've loved a lot of his work he's been working on, which is part of the reason I'm so looking forward to that score. I've loved his work on Gamba, the animated movie from a couple of years ago.
Oh yeah,
that's where I really started to notice him and how much he is able to really make such a, I know you use rich a lot, but he just brings a richness to this world, which I hadn't seen in the movie, but there's just so much power in there. I love the way he uses instruments. I just feel like there's nothing he can't do. Like, there's no project where I feel like, you know what, you're not the right pick for that. Sure, if it's some lame, C-list, one of those dumb comedy kind of things, I'd love for him to have higher up projects, but I feel like he has so much range to work with, is what I'm trying to get at.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I'm very excited for that. But what I say my top 5 are I already set for the rest of the year, obviously Last Jedi and Ragnarok. But one that I'm very curious of is Murder on the Orient Express.
Yeah.
Patrick Doyle do that, back with Kenneth Branagh, with him starring, of course, again. And they work so well together. There's been a lot of scores in the past several years, which I've liked a lot from him. I think possibly my favorite score from 2015 was Cinderella.
Yeah.
It was very high up there. I'm not sure if that was my very favorite, but this is an older story, and so they'll probably try to take the story that we are a little bit familiar with and try to take that step further. And so I could see Doyle also doing the same by trying to up his music a bit, trying to take us to the next level and really do new things with this murder mystery that we've seen several of in the past.
Yeah, I got recently, I think I got the trailer for this in front of Dunkirk, which I just watched Thursday. So I was shocked because I didn't know that Johnny Depp was in it and some of those other actors, and I was like, they do all of these reveal shots in the trailer, and I'm like, oh, this person and this person, all right. So I didn't know who was in it exactly, except for Kenneth Branagh. It's kind of weird seeing Kenneth Branagh standing there and I am the best detective around or something, and I'm like, oh, no. All right.
Well, we'll wait until it comes out to see if that's true or not.
Yeah, I mean, it's really weird when you have a filmmaker who's also an actor, and sometimes you have this case where he puts himself kind of like in certain roles to kind of gratulate himself, to praise himself, I should say. It's kind of, and I know it's like, it's an actor and everything, but when you're also the director, the producer, and you have pretty much all the control over your movie, and you are giving yourself this big and important role, it's sometimes that leaves just, that makes a weird impression on me.
Sure.
It's and he's one of those guys who can pull it off most of the time. I really like Kenneth Branagh both as a director and an actor, but sometimes it's like it's like when Mel Brooks cast himself in several roles sometimes in his own movies, and I was not always happy with his choices. When he played like several roles in Spaceballs, I was like, couldn't you have just played one? What was that? But that's a different topic. But that's just something that.
I'll only have a problem with it if he does a bad job at it. I feel like for now, I don't know. And I feel like we've had some directors who have done a good job playing in their own movies, and we've had some that are a bit more disappointing. So it's up in the air at the moment. I'm open to it. I feel like Branagh has the potential for it, so I'll give him the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, I thought he was very, very good in Dunkirk. You know, he didn't make that movie, but he was one of the few roles in that movie who I actually felt something for.
Sure.
He was very good, and he didn't ever leave that pier. He was always standing.
Much, yeah.
He was always standing in the exact same spot, and he had actually much more much more development than all of the other people who traveled around. But that's its charisma, you know. He really did a good job. He was one of the best parts of that movie. Which brings us to
the actor side. I feel like the technical achievements are what matter there.
Of course. I mean, he was one of the best parts of the movie when it comes to acting.
Yes, certainly.
On that note, I think we can talk about our final topic, which is, do you have something to say about our current state of film music? Do you think it's good? Do you think it's bad? Or is it something totally different? What do you think of kind of like the development that it has taken? Yeah, I would be interested to hear your thoughts about that.
Oh, sure. That's definitely a very broad topic that could encompass a lot more time than we have. But I'm actually very optimistic about the current state and where the genre is going. It still has a lot of issues. There's a lot of disappointments here and there. But really, I think there's a lot to look forward to. We've had so many advances in the technology of how these are produced, that they're done more efficiently, so that the composer's voice can come through. We're seeing a lot more younger and more revolutionary voices come out that allow for these new styles. Some people might not like the electronics and the synths and the more experimental styles that are tried, but if you don't try it, you won't really know if it's good or not. Some are good, some aren't, but we've got such a great age of filmmaking in general that it allows for those type of voices to come through and see whether they really work or not. You know, there's a lot of things I'd love to see more of. I'd love to see more great themes used. I'd love to see more thematic continuity throughout series and within movies themselves. It'd be wonderful, of course, to hear a greater voice from the really talented female composers that we're hearing hopefully more and more from.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's a lot to be looking forward to in this world. I don't know if you've seen it, but there's the documentary that's been going around, Score.
I haven't seen it yet, but I want to. Yeah, I heard a lot of things about it.
Very supportive of it. I saw it a few months ago. Very, very happy with it. It's one of my top 5 movies of the whole year, and possibly my favorite documentary I've ever seen. Yes, of course, I'm biased about the genre of film music, and so it's great to see something that captures that passion in it. And I love that also because it's able to show other people how important and enriching this genre is, and hopefully, it's been getting great reviews, it's been going around. I'd love to see that embraced more by critics and the filmmakers to allow the freedom that these composers need and to catch on to that more. Often film music seems to be an afterthought. I said at the opening of the show, I work in film production, and so you rarely hear that much about the film music. Like, some people think about it a little bit, but I feel like it just doesn't have the grasp that can.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we're making the right steps toward helping that be a lot more of a reality. I feel like people are mentioning those more in their reviews. People are talking about them a lot more. Like this year, we've had Beauty and the Beast, Baby Driver, and Guardians of the Galaxy 2, which all those were driven by songs but that just shows that people are noticing the songs in it, this style of music, and so hopefully people can embrace the more orchestral side of the music as well. I really enjoyed the very last track of Oxymix Volume 2, Guardians Inferno. Yeah, it's a little cheesy at times, but it's written by Tyler Bates, put into all these songs, so people notice that theme and hopefully latch onto that more.
Yeah.
I'm very hopeful. I feel like more and more we're getting composer announcements that I'm very excited for. A lot of the time when it's a composer I've never heard of or is just starting out, we're able to hear some really great stuff there. They're able to do a good job in on their early work, and that helps us to find these people really come out of the woodwork more.
Yeah, like, the first gig for Ryan Amon, who did like some trailer music, and then he was hired by Neil Blomkamp for Elysium, his first movie job ever, and it's this big blockbuster, and he does a superb job with it. It's actually a very, it was a powerful score, and it fit the movie well, and that's a composer's dream. How many chances do you have?
I feel like a lot of composers are also stuck used to be, where they're very stuck in one thing.
Yeah.
Oh, you do a great job on these action cues, so we're just going to give you all these action, adventure, thriller kind of things. But nowadays, we're able to see people branch out more. I loved when, Christoph Beck was hired on for Ant-Man, that this guy had generally pretty much just done comedies and a few animated movies here and there.
Yeah, he did the first Percy Jackson movie also, so he had like one action fantasy film.
Sure, but I feel like Percy Jackson wasn't that popular, so to speak. I don't feel like it latched onto audiences as much as a big budget Marvel movie would.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's definitely a good point. But it's cool to see how he's done a great job on this style, and then we see him do a really spectacular job on Ant-Man, which I put as among the very best of the Marvel scores. I'm very happy that that type of thing is able to go on, that we've seen. Now, of course, that movie does have a lot of comedy undertones.
Yeah, so it's not totally new water, but it's definitely... And also, like, it was weird to me that he was chosen to score... Edge of Tomorrow, because that was something totally out of his wheelhouse.
I totally that was before, so yeah, that would probably be the first one.
Yeah, but it was kind of weird, it wasn't, the score worked fine in context and it's powerful and everything, but it's so abrasive and it's very, very dark and heavy, and it wasn't like anything I ever heard of him. So I thought it was really interesting that the director chose him or whoever did, and he was like, all right, I'm going to try something new. And it worked, but it was very, very weird because the director before that had worked with John Powell on some movies. So maybe he was the first choice, but they couldn't get him, who knows? And then they were like, we need some composer who maybe like is willing to do kind of like a style like John Powell's Bourne movies and everything, Bourne scores. Who knows what the mindset was behind that? But I thought it was an interesting composer choice. Like, also like how they picked. It's always interesting how the Leica studios, how they pick their composers, because it's always different and always interesting. Like how it chose Henry Selick chose Bruno Collet for Coraline, and it was great. And then this guy who hadn't done a film score prior to Paranorman, John O'Brien, I don't know how you pronounce his name, and he did a very good job. It was kind of like a throwback to the Italian horror movies. In a sense, and then they chose Dario Marianelli for Box Trolls, which was his first animation gig, and he was great. And then he wrote with Kubo, one of the best scores of 2016, my favorite score of 2016.
Wow.
Yeah, it actually the number one score of 2016 is a tie between two because I couldn't decide. So I have two favorite scores who share number one, and that's Kubo and Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them.
All right. I was a little let down by Fantastic Beasts. I feel like there could have been more there, but maybe it's just I saw the movie before listening to the score. The score wasn't out yet. So
all right. Yeah, I think
I just feel like it wasn't used well enough in the movie itself. In a way, maybe the mix wasn't right, and I had sort of a bad taste in my mouth from it. But it's not bad by any means. It's just Harry Potter is such a rich history of the music that's made the Wizarding World so real, but also so fantastical at the same time. And I feel like Fantastic Beasts didn't capture that essence that we were looking for.
All right, because in my opinion, it achieved to be better than some of the John Williams efforts, actually. And also, the one gripe I have with Fantastic Beasts is that there are several great new themes, but there isn't one new overreaching theme for this new series yet. You know, you don't know which theme is gonna be the new Hedwig's theme, kinda. It's weird because you have several themes who have the potential, you know, kind of like the action theme for Newt Scamander, and also like the friendship theme they establish. There isn't one yet you can pick as the new big theme for this new series. So that's the only gripe, you know, how he doesn't really use the themes in a leitmotivic way, but more like situational, even though there are some themes you can connect to certain characters. You know, obviously all the Kowalski stuff is very easily identifiable and connects to him. Also like the Newt Scamander stuff, but there are some themes he uses in more looser terms when it comes to themes, so you can't really connect them to certain places or characters or something. So that's the only gripe I have with the score. Everything else I love.
Sure, I'm still a little apprehensive about the series overall. I didn't feel like it met up to the quality that we're looking for. I'm still willing to give it a try. I'm looking forward to whatever the next one is. I'm really excited to hear whatever the title is. I feel like there's so many ways it can go. My brother and I have had way too many discussions about where we think the next title can go. But we know James Newton Howard is supposed to be back, and I'm definitely willing to give him another try. See sort of how this one grows. You know, this one I feel like will hopefully be easier to embrace once we have the sequel come around and we can see how the music has developed.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And this, so I really like how your optimistic approach to all of this. You know how like the current state of...
Oh, why not?
Yeah, of course. You know, you have a lot of great scores nowadays, but there, especially like with some of those videos which turned up on YouTube, which discussed like the Marvel Cinematic Universe when it comes to the scores, and how you know, they say, you know, some of the problems, it's like, you know, temp tracking and everything, and you know, scoring in a cliched way, blah blah blah, and it's like, you know, and there are a lot of arguments where you can say, you know, this has been there since the dawn of time, and it's just the way how they didn't really care much about thematic continuity, and now they are getting better at that. How you can hear the Avengers theme at a certain point in Ant-Man, and also the Falcon theme established by Henry Jackman in Winter Soldier. That turns up when the Falcon first appears, that I like. And the best example, of course, is how Danny Elfman made like this hybrid theme of Silvestri's original theme. That's one of the best examples. This is how you should do this. And sometimes they just don't, you know, they use the Avengers theme in Spider-Man Homecoming, but wasn't the Brian Tyler theme for Iron Man not available, you know? Was there some kind of like problem with the rights. That's really weird. It's just, you know, when you can use the Silvestri theme, it's obvious that they care about thematic continuity. Then use the Tyler theme, which is the best out of all of the Iron Man themes, in my opinion, at least. So it's just, you know, that's kind of like a shame. You see, they care about it.
Oh, sure. Both times that I've heard, both times I've seen the movie, that moment where he shows up to help during the ferry scene,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just like humming Brian Tyler's themes myself.
Yeah.
As Iron Man shows up. It would have fit so perfectly there, and I'd love to see someone make like an edit to bring that in.
Yeah, I think someone will do this. Someone will do this. You know, you see like a Spider-Man looking on the side, and then you see, you know, like in the trailer, you know, Iron Man turning up and dum 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 dum, and yeah, that would fit perfectly. And it's a shame that they didn't do that. You know, I'm sure there's a reason. Maybe there was like, because there's some kind of dubious things going on with the Age of Ultron soundtrack, and I'm not quite sure how that worked out. You know, maybe like, I don't know, even if Brian Tyler left the franchise, you know, kind of like not in a good way, who knows? You know, I heard something like because of the tragic death of Paul Walker and how that affected the shoot of Fast and Furious 7, how there was a problem with his schedules doing the music for that. And maybe like he had to leave the project earlier, and Danny Elfman came in. And some rumors also say that they weren't happy with the music as it was, and then they brought Danny Elfman in to fix something. So it's I don't know which one is true. I hope the one is true that doesn't indicate that he left the Marvel Cinematic Universe, you know, in some kind of like anger state, because he did some of the best scores for that franchise. So I hope I hope everything was fine. I think I heard some statement of him about this that was positive, you know, that didn't indicate that he was, that he left the project in a bad way. But I don't know. I really don't know what happened there. And it's also like, it was kind of evident how they didn't use any of his themes again later. So who knows, you know?
Sure, I don't try to spread too many rumors in that way. If there's a definitive source about how things happened, that'd be great to hear about. But overall, I feel like his work was good. I feel like the work that we've heard past, since Age of Ultron, has still been very good. I don't know if there's any kind of fallout or whatever, but I don't like to delve too much into rumors about that unless there's a good confirmation about how things transpired. I like to feel the benefit of the doubt. I assume that hopefully things went well, and I want to keep a positive outlook. Creative differences, as they often like to say.
Because there are a lot of complaints nowadays how, the Hans Zimmer school sort of has taken over Hollywood, how he pretty much was the teacher to many composers who work currently in the blockbuster franchise genre. And so a lot of scores kind of sound the same. You have that with Steve Jablonsky and the Transformer scores, which are pretty much, the typical run-of-the-mill remote control action music, which goes back to some of the styles Hans Zimmer did in the late 90s and early 2000s, where he had a really good strike.
90% of the cues from the Transformers franchise, I probably could not tell you which one it's from. It's become extremely bland. I liked some of the work on the original. There's a couple of tracks here and there throughout the rest of the series. But overall, there's just very little that really shows a new voice, but the movies themselves don't do that either, so it's not like the score needs to. Yeah,
you're totally right about that. I reviewed the fourth Transformer score and wasn't very fond of it, and when the fifth score came out, I purchased it and I listened to it for a little bit and I was like, this is not worth a review. You know, it's just, I'm not willing to listen to this like almost 2-hour album or whatever it was. Just to say it's just more of the same. It just wasn't worth it, and I was like willing to skip it. Whereas Steve Jablonsky did an especially good job with the second Turtles movie, where I thought this is actually pretty refreshing for his standards.
Yeah, I actually liked a lot of the cues in there.
It actually, you know, the Turtles themselves get the luxury of 3 themes, just the Turtles alone. And for pretty much every other character, you also have a distinct theme. You have one for the Shredder, you have one for the Falcon, I think. You have one great one for Krang, and one for Casey Jones, and also one for what was the professor called, played by Tyler Perry? I always forget his name. I'm
not sure. I never saw the sequel.
All right.
Didn't care for the original enough to watch the sequel, I suppose.
All right, yeah.
But I thought it was cool the way they used the original theme song.
Yes.
As the last cue there.
That's actually not in the movie. I think that's.
No, it's not in the movie.
No, it's not the movie. I think it's just a track for the album. In the movie, in the main credits, they use just a different version of the song, but it's actually the song, and it's a hybrid of the TV theme, and they also managed to squeeze in the Go Ninja Go. It's a hybrid of those 2 songs. And it works well. It works very well. I would suggest to you to go to YouTube and just watch the end credits of Turtles 2, because it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to watch and a lot of fun to hear, because the credits are also visually done in the kind of cheap cartoon style, which go back to the original series. And it works very well. And the song is cool too. But yeah, that Steve Jablonsky version of the song, I don't think it's in the movie. Maybe it's at the tail end of the end credits, but I'm positive that it's not. But yeah,
I just thought it's cool how recently with Turtles 2, Power Rangers, and also with Spider-Man, we've had orchestral versions of these classic themes that people know from decades ago.
Yeah, I liked the Spider-Man one.
It really helps connect things together and helps people really admire that music a lot more. I'm very happy with all of those that we've heard so far. None of them are perfect. They could have been done better. But it's a cool style that I'd love to hear a bit more of.
Yeah, nostalgia, the biggest power on earth.
Exactly.
In so many terms, yeah. And going back to the Hans Zimmer school and everything, you're right. There are many people are right. There is this certain type of generic blockbuster sound, but the most talented people who worked for Zimmer kind of developed their own style, doing their own thing, mentioning Henry Jackman, Ramin Djawadi, and Lorne Balfe again. And also I was very surprised when the first, when Godzilla 2014 came out, and they didn't use a remote control composer. The director said, you know what, let's get Alexandre Desplat, who has never scored a film like this. And I was like, cool. And he delivered good.
Oh, yeah. That was a great payoff there. And it was cool to see Desplat do that kind of style also. It's another one of those composers branching out who we love to see more of that.
Yeah, because he's done stuff with action before. He has done Golden Compass and also like his animation stuff like Rise of the Guardians, which is a great score. But he hasn't done a film of this scale before, and he is mostly known for his, dramas and also like quirky Wes Anderson stuff. So seeing him scoring a movie like this was very refreshing. And also I am friends with a movie critic who actually kind of disliked the score in context. He at first thought it was good, but then it was kind of like it was too much in his opinion. How the music pretty much took over the whole movie, and in his opinion he he expected any second the monsters facing the screen and saying like, keep calm, man, we are doing this.
Sure, there's always a few of those movies out there where the music really envelops the whole thing. And at that point, it's really, do you like the music or do you not? And that's going to affect a lot of your experience with the entire film.
Yeah, because that was one of the great things about Pan, because the music was so the music was so loud in the movie. Unlike a lot of modern movies nowadays, the music really was in the foreground for a lot of scenes. And so, because I first listened to the music on its own, and I wasn't quite sure about it, because I loved John Powell, but maybe I listened to the wrong tracks, which were a little bit too creative, maybe, as a single listening experience. And then when I saw the movie in the theater, I appreciated the score much more. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. This is the best score of the year. And I enjoyed how you could hear the music so well, because nowadays there's kind of like the mentality going on with directors, how the music is, like you said, an afterthought. How they are like, oh yeah, it's the music, because movies have to have music, but it's not that important, it's not, you don't really need to listen to it in the movie. And it's very, very disappointing when you go back to certain movies from the Hitchcock era, where you hear every note.
So I feel like this is something that I've mentioned a lot of times. I feel like we, as a culture of fans of both film music and of film, often talk very nostalgically about older films and their music. But I feel like we have, percentage-wise, just as many, if not more, great scores today. Like,
yes.
If you name a year from a long time ago, someone can probably think of like 5 at most great scores from that year. Mm-hmm. And, we're going to remember those ones very fondly, and we're not going to talk that much about the bad ones, whereas today we're going to talk more about the ones that are but not as great. And so it creates this sort of bias in our mind that I don't feel is fair to the current culture.
Yeah, I agree with you totally. Because nowadays you have a much more diverse movie choice, because you have so many different genres every year coming out. You have animated movies, you have horror, you have action, superhero movies, you have thrillers, comedies, everything. And so when at the end of the year, since a few years, when I'm doing a top 10 best scores, it's a lot of different genres. You have like like I said, you have animation, you have a horror score, you have adventure. One of the best scores of 2015 also was In the Heart of the Sea, which was totally an underrated score. Nobody online talked about it. Nobody. I didn't find.
You're not sure I embraced that one as much as a lot of people, but glad you were able to like it.
Yeah, because I didn't find one review of that score. And I was just, why? The score is amazing. And I listened to the whole score before I watched the movie, and I understood every scene. I was like able to see the scene in front of me without watching the movie. And I was like, all right, this happens in this scene, this happens in this scene. And then I watched the movie and I was totally right about everything. So that shows you how powerful and how fitting it was. And, nowadays, you have your generic blockbuster things and all that stuff, but also you have so much creativity, especially in the animation department, which is a very, very thankful job for a lot of composers, because I think they have the mentality of, we have to make the music more grandiose and obvious because it's a kids movie, and in modern thrillers and everything, you're kind of like, all right, this is for a mature audience and they get it, and so we have to make it more subtle. And I'm like, no, that's the wrong decision. I know a lot of people have a lot of problems with the Dunkirk score, and I listened to it before I watched the movie, a little bit, and then I watched the movie and I was like, listening to it in context, I really don't have a problem with it. It fits the scenes, it gives you a specific mood. It's kind of like, it hasn't much of an emotion except for like tension, but I thought it was a creative a creative enough score, you know. But yeah, it's a problem. Not every movie will sound like the other, and that's good, you know. I'm all for diversity, and I'm also for, you know, more female composers getting more bigger jobs. I was one of the people who was very disappointed that not someone like Debbie Wiseman or even Rachel Portman got the job for Wonder Woman. And the Wonder Woman,
that is one of the most disappointing things about that movie. I don't feel like Rupert Gregson Williams was. He just definitely wasn't the right voice to carry that. His score is all right. It never hurts the movie.
No.
But this was a fantastic opportunity in several ways. And it would have
Yes.
been fantastic to have heard someone a lot more fitting there. Not saying it has to be a female composer. It would have been nice. This is a great opportunity for that. But there's just a different voice that could have been used there.
yeah, in my Wonder Woman score review, I dedicated like a whole paragraph to that topic, and I was it's a shame, but you know, but you know, on the plus side, you have some composers who kind of like bring you kind of honor the legacy of some others, because like I said to Lorne Balfe on Twitter that I thought the Lego Batman movie actually was the best Batman score since Shirley Walker's Mask of the Phantasm.
Wow.
Yeah, it in my opinion it is.
I'm a huge fan of it, but wow, that's big praise there.
Yeah, totally, because Mask of a Phantasm is one of the, if not the best Batman score. You know, even topping kind of like some of Danny Elfman's work. But Lord Balfe really embraced the style of every Batman score in existence. You know, he paid homage to all of them. You heard Danny Elfman's style. You heard a great deal of Shirley Walker in there. You also have, for obvious reasons, the Hans Zimmer, James Newton Howard tribute in there. And also the Neil Hefti TV theme. You have everything in that score, and it's amazing. And it never feels out of place that there are so many different influences in it. And I said to him in person, I thought it was the best score since Shirley Walker's effort. And he really appreciated it, and he also said, oh, she was one of the most underrated composers ever and everything. And I said to him, she would have been proud when she would have listened to your score. Because it's obvious how he pays homage to her. If the Batman theme in of itself is pretty similar to it, and also its own thing, and kind of like over the top in a parody way, which it should be. It's one of the best scores of the year so far for me. And the Wonder Woman thing, yeah, I thought the score was fine, but it kind of sounded like one of those typical run-of-the-mill action scores. But I'm also so glad that Rupert Gregson Williams has now moved out of the Happy Madison thing and now can score movies with more dignity. That's a plus, at least.
Sure, I'm very glad that I feel like he deserved a chance to break out more. I don't know if this was the adequate opportunity for that. But, you know, DC is not known for making good decisions overall in recent years, so...
Yeah, except for...
Can't say I was surprised.
Yeah, except for now. And I'm also very glad that, because... like Danny Elfman being one of my, if not the favorite composer of mine, it was kind of interesting seeing some kind of development with him, because the last two big movies he did, you know, where he embraced his style we know of him, was Goosebumps, and there was another one of his, and Alice Through the Looking Glass.
I loved Real Steel from a few years back.
Yeah, of course, but like more recently, you know, that was Alice Through the Looking Glass, and the year before Goosebumps. And
sure, yes.
But since a few years, he kind of developed a more serious voice, and he scored some kind of like understated dramas and thrillers, which I thought was very interesting, you know, of him, to see what else he can do. And you can recognize it's him, but it's a different voice. You know, he did stuff like 50 Shades of Grey, and he did The Girl on a Train, and he did something else. He did, like, you know, The Circle, which still has to come out here, and he did Tulip Fever, which just came out here in Germany. So, but now he moves back not only does he move back to blockbusters with Justice League, but he moves back to Batman, which I think is awesome.
Oh yes, I was ecstatic hearing that he would have been my top pick for that, and it just gave me such hope to know that we have such a great team there. It's cool to see Joss Whedon and Danny Elfman. I feel like they did a fair job on doing Age of Ultron. It has the typical problems we're used to on Marvel scores, but Danny Elfman came up to the task, as is Joss Whedon, and this will be very exciting. I haven't looked forward to a DC movie this much since probably The Dark Knight Rises.
Yeah.
Except for Lego Batman. Lego Batman through the roof with.
Yeah, at least in terms of music. I'm still iffy about the movie on its own because I'm not fond of any of the DC Universe movies except for Wonder Woman. But I'm looking forward to the music at least. It has potential to be very, very great. And it's great that coming back to the whole modern score situation, you have several who kind of sound like the same, but you had that back then too. You also had the concept of time tracking and all that stuff, and now you have actually some more diversity in movies because of the way scoring changed and how much more technical achievements we have. You have some scores nowadays who have this very kind of interesting electronic vibe. Even Danny Elfman dives into that with the Circle and some other stuff. And you have one of the most interesting scores I heard this year was King Arthur: Legend of the Sword by Daniel Pemberton.
That was definitely a unique style there.
Very unique. That was unlike anything I heard before. And also the approach that let's make it rough, let's make it edgy with antique instruments and very weird instruments and the kind of breathing it did throughout the action scenes. And it caught my eye during the movie. I thought the movie was pretty awful, but the score actually was nothing like anything I heard before, especially for this kind of big studio thing with a franchise, with eyes on a franchise. And I liked that approach. I liked it a lot, and it was I gave a very positive review to that score because also as a listening experience, it worked for me. So it's cool that we have this kind of diversity nowadays. There are several scores who are not the same. You will have it every year, every time. This sounds like this sounds like this. Unfortunately, in Wonder Woman, you can pretty much hear kind of like the time track situation there, because it sounds like some of the Hans Zimmer soundtracks from the early 2000s. You have some elements of King Arthur in there, the Clive Owen one, and a little bit of also Last Samurai. But it worked fine as what it is. I thought the album situation was a little bit weird because there are a lot of music tracks in the movie that are not on the CD, which I was very disappointed by, because there are several scenes in the movie where I'm like, hey, this is an interesting cue, this is an interesting instrument choice, and then it wasn't on the CD.
Certainly, there's a lot to be desired from that score, but when it comes to Wonder Woman, I would say that there's a lot more writing on the movie itself than on the music, so I'm glad the movie was the success rather than the score. But if I could either have a good movie or a good score, with Wonder Woman, I would have picked a good movie knowing what this represents for the future of cinema and the genre.
Yes, of course. I would have...
That's a rare pick for me. Normally, I'll pick score every time.
I even would have taken, Wonder Woman being disappointing, but at least when it would have made money, I would have been satisfied, because that's all they care about nowadays. And when the movie would have been successful, and it is, then at least that would have... Because if a movie would have been a flop, that would have killed any chance for the future for us to have a female-led superhero movie. That would have been the nail in the coffin. But I'm glad that the movie is good.
I think we'll always come back to it. We've had Elektra, we've had Catwoman, we've had Supergirl, we've had we've had some disappointments in the past. I don't feel like anything's going to be the nail in the coffin.
Yeah, but they killed it. They killed it for a while.
For that to really find legs again. It's even if Wonder Woman was a complete disaster, Marvel wasn't going to ditch their plans for Captain Marvel.
No.
Too much already planned there.
You're right. They would have gone through that, but with everything else, because Catwoman and Elektra, they killed it for a while at least, kind of like how back in the day Batman and Robin killed comic book movies for a little while, but it killed it. And nowadays, where movies are much more expensive with the marketing and everything, I think it would have killed it longer. I'm glad that it didn't. I'm glad that movie was good and also that it made a lot of money. Because I would have taken not good but made a lot of money over not making a lot of money. And yeah, it's difficult to say, but I was so in my video review for Wonder Woman, I went there with a friend of mine, and the whole video is pretty much my relief that finally DC has done a good movie.
Sure.
I actually stated in the video several times, I'm so happy.
Yeah, I was actually. Yeah, it's such a relief. It's because we're coming upon Justice League, and this is when it really counts.
Yeah.
Marvel, not all of their movies prior to Avengers were that good, and so they had to have a few that were very good knockouts there, Captain America and Iron Man. And so, this new DC universe, I was losing a lot of confidence in it, but they really just needed something to give the people more hope in this franchise. And I feel like that's what Wonder Woman did.
Yeah, because one of my brothers...
That's the point of it.
Exactly. One of my brothers, even though he liked Suicide Squad, he disliked Batman v Superman so much that he doesn't want to see Wonder Woman. He was like, I'm done with this. I'm done with this franchise. They ruined it. I'm out. So it's a shame, because I told him I hadn't seen the movie by that point, but I told him I heard it's good. He's like, I don't care. I'm out. They screwed it up, and I was like, all right. I don't know what they will do with Justice League. The trailers just don't interest me at all. I will go see it because I'm a critic and everything, but I would definitely look forward to the score right now. And
sure. Focusing more on film music, I had a question for you. In fact, this is a topic that I often get into when talking to fans of the genre. Do you think that a score, the film music overall, has to work, in order to be successful, in order to be a good score critically, has to work just in the movie, has to work just on album, a standalone listening experience out of context, or does it have to work both ways in order to be successful?
That's kind of tricky, because the most ideal thing would be in both, in the movie and on the album, and most scores are like that. But there are several great movies who have just awful scores, which to mind comes like Prestige. Great movie.
Oh yeah.
Awful music.
Number one example of that. I would, like, a dream come true would be for Christopher Nolan to go back and have Hans Zimmer score The Prestige.
But because who scored The Prestige?
David Julian.
Yeah, because he did.
Which I've liked some of his stuff.
Yeah, because he did a very good. I really liked his music for Insomnia, and I also liked his music in Memento. So I'm like, what happened here? That was so weird. Because I know that he was a good composer, but I actually was very distracted by how incredibly bland the music was in The Prestige.
Sure.
And yeah, that's an interesting question you have there, because sometimes
I'm talking about CD, and I'm talking about from CD to film. The Prestige's music isn't good in movie or on album.
Yeah, it's not.
I can't remember if it has a soundtrack release or not.
I'm pretty sure it has, because I think Jonathan Broxton...
It probably does, I just haven't listened to it for so long because
I'm pretty sure it does, because I think Jonathan Broxton reviewed it. He reviewed the album, so I'm pretty sure there is actually a CD or
I'm sure there is
a download. But another example is like I said before, the horror movies by James Wan. The music by Joseph Bishara in Insidious and in the Conjuring movies, they are very harsh and gritty and experimental, and they work great in the movie. They build the tension and the fright, and you are so... the opening credits alone of The Conjuring, the music is so just... you can't... It's so creepy. But and I didn't listen to the music individually, but I'm pretty sure it would be a very, very difficult experience to listen to it on CD, because it's not much more than just, instrumental textures and sometimes, kind of like musical jump scares and everything. So there's not a whole lot of melodic things going on, even though you can see a quality jump in The Conjuring and The Conjuring 2. The Conjuring 2 is much more instrumental based, and there are some thematic elements, also a lot of with choir. They work a lot with choir in the second Conjuring movie, because it also has like the theme of a nun in there, so that works.
Yeah.
So that's an example where the music works incredibly well in context of the movie, but pretty much every score works in context of the movie. There are some others, but all right. But yeah, on CD, no. Another one where I don't remember really.
Like the big one that brings this up is this year's movie that was very polarizing with people, Dunkirk, musically, I mean.
Yeah, I know you would go there.
Yeah, that's what I'm referring to. Well, I'm referring to a lot of them. I've had this conversation a lot, but I feel like that's where it really came down to, is that I feel like the listening experience on soundtrack is very aggravating and not enjoyable hardly at all. It's one of the most disturbing scores I've heard in a long time, and
yeah,
in context, it works fitting to build up the tension that we've been finding in the movie. May take a little too far at times, but that's really a example of how that can be very polarizing between in context and out of context for this music.
Yeah, you're exactly right, because in the movie I thought it worked very well. I noticed it also. You hear pretty much every note.
Oh, it's impossible not to.
Yeah, it's very loud, and even though the whole movie is loud, the music is loud too. But there is just not.
Oh, it was?
Yeah.
Be sarcastic, but yes. Yeah, that was extremely loud.
But the weird thing was, I actually liked the music in the movie more when it was just the tension thing, especially like I think the title on the CD is Supermarine, where I really liked the action bare bone textures of that. And during the end, where the music actually was allowed to be emotional, with the more prominent Edward Elgar theme in there, it came across to me as a little blander, as a little non-descriptive, as like, all right, now it has to be kind of happy, so the music is kind of more emotional. But there was actually one thing in the movie where the music actually kind of distracted me, because during the action scenes it didn't. I still have to listen to it on CD to give it a review this month, and I'm sure it won't be the most positive, but I will give it its fair shake in context of a movie and how it works on CD. Who knows? It's not the worst thing Zimmer has ever done. I think it's technically a very interesting and also very, very creative score. But yeah, it's not.
It continues his trend of really trying to be a lot more experimental when working with Nolan. Nolan allows him a lot of freedom and able to devise these different textures we haven't seen before, and this is another element of that.
Yeah, and I'm one of a few people who liked his Chappie score a lot. I liked how he pretty much got his old synthesizers and said, all right, back to the roots now. He was actually very happy to do that. And I liked the score. I liked it very much. But I'm one of the only people on this planet, actually, I think, who do. I thought that it fit the movie well, and it also made for an interesting listening experience. And it was harsh, and it was electronic, and it wasn't very melodic at all. It was certainly experimental, but I liked it just fine. So yeah,
there's a couple of times I like in it, but
so I'm really
share your enthusiasm for it.
Yeah, I'm willing to forgive it a lot of things, and I think it's the same. And it's like, where did Hans Zimmer go and everything? You also have to consider the movies he does, because with Batman v Superman, that's a very somber, dark, and supposedly edgy movie. He has to score the movies that he's given. Also, this is the same year, he has done Dunkirk, all right. And also he did The Boss Baby, which was like totally, 100% different. So he still does the kind of music that people like most of him. Whenever he does write for animation, he's very fun. And it's extremely fun. And now he kind of wants to try something else out. I'm pretty sure he said in an interview that he's done with superheroes now. He wants to move on, and I can respect that. Also like how he didn't...
He followed up that later, that he wants one that speaks to him more, so...
Yeah, I'm sure he can do something else.
We might hear more from him, but I think we've had our fill of Zimmer's superhero style, and we're getting to hear other voices, which is nice.
It's also impressive how he did the big three. He did Batman, he did Superman, and he did Spider-Man. That's big, man.
Oh, yes.
That's very impressive.
Oh, yeah, that's fantastic. And Megamind is one that I really enjoy. I mentioned that earlier, but
that's wonderful.
Megamind is able to do a spin-off one, which sort of showed he can do superheroes that aren't the typical style. We're able to see a new flavor of his in that way.
Yeah, totally. So, he will move on. He will, dear fans out there who didn't like Dunkirk, he will do a score that's more in your of your liking. It's just there was a time where Danny Elfman did something else. Where he did stuff like The Kingdom, which was totally a different thing for him. And I was like, really? And it was a totally different kind of score. Also, like Hulk was a little bit more different and instinct. There was a time where he chose different movies when we were used to, and now he has kind of like these understated dramas and thrillers. And now, but him going back to his Hollywood roots, with a big superhero movie, that's cool. And yeah, it's fun seeing how certain composers choose their stuff. Also like how Hans Zimmer, I think it was a time issue, or maybe like he wasn't interested in writing for Pirates 5, who knows. But I liked how he passed it on to a collaborator who was there from the very beginning, from the first Pirates score, and he actually did a pretty good job with the new material. And of course he recycled a lot, because it's this kind of sequel, and most of the old themes coming back were pretty fitting, but the new themes he did were very, very good. I liked the new Jack Sparrow theme. I liked the Karina theme a lot.
I'm a huge fan of that score. I was so satisfied with it.
Yeah, I was too. Dead
Men Tell No Tales in its music. The movie has stuff to be desired, but what I most wanted was to have a score that I could get behind, and Jeff Zanelli really delivered, and excited to hear what he does next. Me too. I had to watch that movie twice. I had to watch it, for my review, and I had to watch it again because my little brother wanted to see it. But I was indifferent both times. It's just whatever. This franchise, I've been a fan of it, but now there's no fresh wind anymore. but the music, that was also one of those cases where I really listened to the music. There was one of those cases where I wasn't able to listen to the music before I saw the movie. So I
heard the music first when I watched it, and the new Jack Sparrow theme really, in the shark scene especially, where I started noticing it, I was like, oh, this is new. This is a new theme for him, and it's pretty cool. So that was great. But yeah, everything else, I guess before we can plug our things, we come to the conclusion that we aren't in a bad state of film scores. That's kind of like how all the people, some people and critics say, Hollywood has run out of ideas and this is the dark age of movies and everything. And I'm like, guys, yes, there are a lot of bad movies coming out, but guess what? Also a lot of good ones. And that was always the case. There was this dark age of movies in the kind of like in the late 90s, where it was just terrible, you know, where you had stuff like the Ronald Emmerich Godzilla and then some of those other kids movie stuff. And nowadays, you know, you have this big franchise thing going on with a lot of things, with superheroes, with Star Wars, with animated movies, with Disney pretty much owning everything. And it's but that's a great opportunity for composers, and we are just doing fine. I think there are also
I do agree with the sentiment that we hear a lot of the lack of really great themes. Like, I doubt there is a theme, even from this entire decade, that a casual fan could hum. But from the last decade, we have great stuff from Lord of the Rings, Pirates, the Dark Knight trilogy. There's been lots of these themes that I feel like we used to have, and it could just be it takes more time for people to latch onto them, but there's something missing there. That is one part which I don't want to sound like I'm just ignoring that fact. That is a big issue which I would love to see addressed more. One thing I definitely want to mention before closing is that another part that I feel like we have a bit of a problem in this industry is the lack of appreciation for the orchestra itself.
Yeah.
But when you watch a movie nowadays, you go through the credits and it'll tell you like everyone involved in the score for a movie. It'll tell you the composer, the conductor, the orchestrator, the music arranger, music supervisor. It's got all of these credits on there. All of the one-sheet movie posters tell you who did the music, and that's great. I'm so glad we do that. We credit so many people in the credits movies. We credit the caterers. We credit the extras, like all these people, which they should be. They do a great work. I don't know why you don't credit the orchestra, the performers, the people who did that. That would not take that much time. You could probably list all of them within 20 seconds of the credits, and that'd be something that I'd love to see happen, is for people who help to bring this music to life through the orchestra, to be able to get their dues on the credits of films, to be more appreciated in that way.
Yeah, I get your point, but you have since a few years, you know, this new policy where you have to list all of the individual musicians in the booklet of a CD. So that's good, at least, because that wasn't common like in the 90s or anything like that. But yeah, because not every guy who goes to see the movie also buys the soundtrack. So yeah, I totally get your point there. But maybe there's something, you know, with it's already long enough and everything. Who knows? You know, maybe this will change sometime. Whatever, because sometimes we credit soloists. Sometimes we credit like a certain singer or like someone with
Joshua Bell or Tina Guo. Or there's some featured performers. Lindsey Sterling got a good credit on Pete's Dragon last year. So we do get those, but I'd love to see that more. I don't want to be nitpicking, simply trying to bring up, yes, I am very hopeful for the future. These are a few things that I'd love to see more of as we continue on in this genre. Yeah,
absolutely. And you're totally right that there's a lack of big themes that people are able to hum when we're going out of a theater. You know, me being a film music aficionado, I can hum every Marvel theme. You know, I have them all remembered.
Me too. I tried after there's that video a while back about the Marvel Symphonic Universe. about how no one could hum them. Like, no, from now on, I will at all times know how to hum everything.
Yeah, Avengers or anything. Yeah. But also some of the newer scores also, talked. Some of the scores who have a legacy, and now there's a new one coming out. I don't know how many people actually remember some of the new themes. Now, can you? I'm sure you can. What is this new theme? I'm pretty sure you can recognize it.
Oh, that's Ray.
Yeah, exactly. You can.
I was humming the rest of it to myself. Yeah.
you can recognize that. And it also caught my ear when I first watched the movie in that particular scene. And then also,
And we heard there's a TV spot beforehand where they had a bit of that. So once I heard it, I recognized a little bit of it.
All right, so I'm
TV spot they released.
Okay. I didn't see that. So because I didn't want to see anything of a movie before I went to go see it. And they did a great job of marketing it, so you didn't know anything about it. J.J. Abrams always does that very well.
Good job whistling there.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm actually practicing a lot. I'm whistling to it all the time when I hear it on my iPod on the streets. And I don't know, and I don't care about the looks of the other ones. This is my music, damn it. And it's... with John Williams there, with Star Wars, and you made very, very good points about all of that, and we are both pretty hopeful, but
hope so.
but we're there's always going to be problems. There's always going to be bad music. There's
of course
music that's not fitting, and there's also going to be bad movies, bad screenplays, bad acting, but and also a lot of bad movies, and people will go in there anyway and will make tons of money. But now, how people kind of woke up, it's the end of a lot of those franchises, I guess. And, Michael Giacchino is one of those composers who is not afraid of wearing its heart on its sleeve. He's one of the few composers now who will...
Oh, certainly. I cannot say enough good things about his work that he's been doing.
He is so much about themes and feelings and everything, and that's the big difference between a score like Spider-Man: Homecoming and a score like which was one of the more blander ones, like something like Winter Soldier, because he is just not afraid of being obvious, and that's what because I really don't understand that statement about, film music is supposed to be invisible, you don't really have to listen to it. And I'm like, the whole movie in all aspects is trying to manipulate you're supposed to cheer for the heroes, and you're supposed to be scared. So why isn't the music allowed to manipulate you?
Sure, I would say, I would definitely disagree about it being invisible. I think it should be there. It should be a presence that you're able to recognize. Where I would say that's trying to go is that the music shouldn't detract from the movie. It shouldn't pull away from it. Which, of course, they should always be complementary for each other, so that should rarely be a problem.
Yeah, but sometimes...
That's how I would phrase that.
Oh, all right, I get you. Yes, sometimes I don't know where the last time was that a film score really distracted me from what I saw. There was one moment in Dunkirk where the music kind of sounded like a siren or something, and where I was like, really, that was one point where I noticed the score kind of being a little bit too much in your face, and I was really I really strongly disliked Interstellar, both music and film.
It has a lot of problems.
Yeah,
I liked it more on a recent viewing, but... All
right, fair enough.
I agree that it does have a lot to be desired, both musically and in the movie, but I see where people are coming from when I know a lot of friends that really love it.
Yeah.
The music. I don't know that many people who adore the movie.
All 3 hours of it. Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, but it's...
Which, it's a movie about time, and it makes you feel that it's a long movie.
God damn. Yeah, I thought Dunkirk
was
was...
surprising since Dunkirk is almost half the length.
Yeah, it's actually, I was actually really surprised, but that movie didn't need to be longer. I was like, all right, this is the perfect length and nothing much else, you know. So that was refreshing to see a Nolan movie where he was actually restrained in terms of running time. Because maybe he listened to some of the criticisms, you know, because also that movie is one of the more visual movies that hasn't a lot of dialogue. You know, you don't have these characters talking about the concept of war and what does it mean and everything. I really liked how he told it with looks of the people and with just very few lines of dialogue. And, you know, that made for a viewing experience that I thought was kind of emotionless because you really didn't get to know a lot of these people, but you still got their goals, their basic goals, but you got it and you didn't have, you know, them to monologue about it like they did it in The Dark Knight Rises. And in
focused on the war. It's not a movie about characters. It's a story about this event as a whole. And it's a unique form of storytelling, which I was glad we were able to have.
Yeah, and it also didn't think the audience was stupid, like he did with Interstellar, obviously, where you thought, oh, I'm so smart, and the people are so stupid, where I have to explain everything 3 times.
The concept of love.
Damn, it was so upsetting. I couldn't stand that one. But I like Dunkirk in that way. How he was.
Have you seen it IMAX?
No, I saw one of the last screenings they did in the town I was during vacation, and so it was one of the smaller screens, but it had great sound design, so that made up for it.
I also feel I give Interstellar a B- in IMAX. I give a C out of IMAX.
Oh.
It's one of those where I tell people, don't watch it if you can't see on Blu-ray, because the Blu-ray gives it the larger format.
All right. Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah. We got sidetracked a little bit, but that's fine.
Oh, a little bit.
On that note, before you can plug your stuff, let me say that it was a pleasure to have you here as a guest to talk about someone. To talk with someone about film music, you know, who loves film music as much as I do, because you really don't meet a lot of those people personally. I have a German friend who also does score reviews, who has a lot of big knowledge, and we talk about film music all the time. It's really refreshing to talk with people about that, because in my surroundings, you know, with my personal friends and everything, I really don't have that much people there. So it was great to have you on board here to give this podcast a little bit another direction. I also branched out to several film composers to ask them to do an interview here on the podcast, and maybe there will be in the future. I'm not promising it yet openly in case it might not work, but there is someone who's interested, and so I hope this will happen. But
look forward to it. However that goes.
Oh yeah, I'm really excited. But it was a pleasure to have you here. I hope we can continue this maybe with another topic sometime later. Thank you very much for participating, and now you can say your last.
Thank you. It's good. Yeah, thank you. It's good to talk. I'm always more than open to chatting about this topic. There's a few things I'm more passionate about, so this is definitely a pleasure there.
Thank you very much. So you can plug your stuff now, where we can find you and what you write and everything.
Sure. So obviously the easiest way to find me is on Twitter @GhostSoundtracks. I try to tweet daily and keep you up to date. I also am on Facebook and Instagram, posting similar things, but a lot of times those are better for different formats. So I definitely encourage people to follow on all 3 of those to get as much of this world as possible, trying to bring people more into the world of film music and all of the different materials that are out there. And I write movie reviews all the time that people can be checking out also. And I'm currently, another project I'm working on is I'm developing a card game. It's not about film music, but it's about fiction in general and being able to do trivia in a sort of unique light. I'm going to be starting a Kickstarter for that soon. It's called Continuity, the game of fictional timelines. We're trying to put fictional events in the order of when they are said to have occurred.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
I've been developing that over the past few years. Oh, it's been a lot of fun. I'm excited to bring that to people, hopefully pretty soon.
Oh, that's great. All of your stuff I will also link in the video description so you can find it. Dear listeners, please read his stuff. It's very, very entertaining. You can find all my stuff on YouTube and also on Facebook, just typing in Lasse Vogt or using the YouTube name TheDeppert, where you can find all my reviews, all my short films I did, also with original music by the great musician Oliver Seidel, who lives in Berlin. He's an amazing composer. He did 2 of my soundtracks for my student films. Please visit his website, oliverseidelmusic.com. I will also link it in the description. He's an amazing musician. When you need good music for your projects, go to him. He's great. You can also find my written movie reviews on scoregeek.wordpress.com. You can find me on Twitter, on Facebook, on pretty much everything. Always keeping you updated with certain movie news. And you can find my podcast right here. You listened to Fans About Films. Thank you so much for being a part of it, dear guest. Now we will say goodbye and I will stop recording. I wish you all the best, dear listeners out there. I hope you liked this episode. Please comment and visit the links. Thank you so much. Thank you, dear guest. We will now, after going really overboard with the length, we will say goodbye and see you next time. This was Fans About Films. Bye.
Bye.